My sister coldly kicked me out while Mom took her side, so I left in silence. By morning, 13 calls marked the start of their nightmare. I'm Arlena. Last week, my sister looked me straight in the eye and said, "Why don't you just disappear?" And my mother, she agreed. So, I left quietly. No shouting, no scene, just silence. This morning, they called me 13 times. But long before that moment, they'd already started cutting me out of family photos, out of public speeches, out of my own memories. They erased me like I was an inconvenience. What happens when your own blood rewrites your story without you? And more importantly, what do you do when you decide to write it back? Dinner had been quiet, but not peaceful. Vera had spent most of it pushing food around her plate, tapping her fork against the dish like she was waiting for a cue only she could hear. Clara sat across from me, glass of wine in hand, eyes drifting toward the television that wasn't even on. The roast was lukewarm. The salad untouched. No one had said much. That should have warned me something was coming. It did. Vera set her fork down with a sharp clink. "Why don't you just disappear?" I blinked. My brain didn't quite catch up with my ears at first. She said it casually, like ordering a refill. No heat, no sarcasm, just a flat suggestion to vanish. Before I could respond, before I even found breath, Clara looked up from her wine and added, "Maybe we'd all be better off." And there it was, the sentence that erased me. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't ask why. I just stared at both of them and realized for the first time in my adult life that they meant it. They weren't trying to hurt me. They were just tired of pretending I belonged at that table. I've learned a few things about my family over the years. 1. Whoever talks louder wins. 2. Silence when wielded right can last longer than any scream. So, I said nothing. Instead, I stood up, excused myself without being asked, and climbed the stairs to what used to be my room. It had changed. The posters were gone. Half my books were in boxes I didn't pack. A stack of folded linen sat where my nightstand had been, like someone had already begun the process of converting it into a guest room. I didn't linger. I pulled out the old canvas bag I kept under my bed, tossed in my laptop, a few chargers, a change of clothes, and one photo, me standing in front of the cabin in Sisters, Oregon. The day we brought home that ridiculous carved moose statue Clara hated, his arm around my shoulder, my smile real. We both looked like we belonged somewhere. By the time I reached the bottom of the stairs, they were still seated. Vera was scrolling on her phone. Clara poured another inch of Merlot. As I reached for my keys, Clara didn't even look up. "You always take things too personally," she said, like it was some medical diagnosis. I held the door a second longer than necessary. "I won't make this mistake again," I told her. It wasn't a threat. It was a vow. No one followed me out. The sky outside was low and heavy, the kind of gray Oregon specialized in this time of year. I didn't even turn on the radio. Just drove street after street until the road narrowed and I saw Harper's porch light blinking against the dusk like it was waiting for me. She opened the door before I knocked. Didn't ask anything. Just stepped aside to let me in. Like this wasn't the first time I'd come undone at her threshold. We didn't talk much. She made tea, handed me a mug with both hands, and sat beside me in silence. I don't remember if I drank it. Just remember the heat of the ceramic and the hum of the refrigerator. It was close to midnight when I finally said it out loud. She meant it. Mom, too. This time they both meant it. Harper didn't reply, and I didn't need her to. I turned off my phone that night, but not before the first missed call lit up the screen. Back then, I didn't know it would be 13 by morning. I also didn't know that just a week before it all unraveled, I had nearly convinced myself that maybe things were turning around. It started with Vera's voice at the edge of the hallway. "Mom's doing a charity brunch for the community center next weekend. You want to help coordinate?" I blinked at her, unsure if I'd misheard. "You want me there?" She rolled her eyes. I didn't say headline, Arlena, just help. Still, it was the first time in months she asked me to do anything other than move my car. So, I said yes. I showed up early, hair done, heels a bit too much for folding chairs and buffet trays, but I wanted to look like someone you didn't forget to mention. That morning, Vera handed me a clipboard like I belonged. I even smiled genuinely for the first time in longer than I'd admit. Guests arrived in waves. Old neighbors, donors, 2 retired teachers from our high school. I greeted people, directed them to seats, smiled until my cheeks ached. One older gentleman, Mr. Headley, approached with a kind grin. "Well, if it isn't Vanessa," he chuckled, patting my arm. I froze. "It's Arlena," I corrected gently. He blinked. "Ah, my mistake. You girls look more and more alike these days." We didn't. Later, I found a stack of printed invitations near the check-in table. The line beneath the event title read, "Hosted by Clara Whitmore and Vera Whitmore and guest." I laughed at first, a dry kind of laugh that stayed in the throat. I told myself it was probably a print error, but it echoed louder than I wanted. Things didn't get better once the speeches began. Vera stood confidently beside Clara, microphone in hand, glowing under soft stage lights. She spoke about legacy, about the importance of roots and community, and then about a memory. "When I was 10, Vera said, I entered the Northwest Young Writers Competition. Dad helped me revise my story. Remember, Mom? And when I won, we drove all the way to Portland to accept the award." People clapped. Clara smiled, nodding along, but I couldn't breathe. That wasn't her story. It was mine. I remember the night I stayed up until 2 a.m. asking Dad to read my 5th revision. I remember how Vera didn't care, how she'd rolled her eyes at me hunched over the desk. And I remember Dad whispering, "They'll remember this one, sweetheart." But now they clapped for her. And I sat at the back of the room watching a piece of my childhood pass hands like it never belonged to me. After the event, I pulled Vera aside in the foyer while people milled around with paper cups of lukewarm coffee. "Why would you tell that story?" I asked quietly. She didn't even blink. "You really think you earned that win? You wouldn't have even finished that story if Mom hadn't begged me to help you clean up the ending." "That's not true." She leaned closer. "Everything you have, you owe us. You're just living off what we built." Behind her, Clara hovered nearby, listening. I waited for her to say something. To correct the record, to protect the daughter she always called her quiet one. But Clara turned away, offering a polite nod to someone walking by. That night, I sat in my car outside Harper's place. The windows fogged slightly, though I wasn't cold. I didn't knock, didn't go inside, just stared at myself in the rearview mirror. What if Vera was right? What if none of it had ever been mine? Memories are fragile things. Twist them enough times and even the person who lived them starts to forget where the truth ends and the lie begins. I drove home before midnight. My apartment was still and dim. I dropped my purse by the door, kicked off my shoes, and stood at the edge of my bedroom. I'd packed a weekend bag, expecting I might stay with Harper after the brunch. I unpacked it, folded everything neatly, slid it back into the closet like it had never moved. Maybe I was being too sensitive, I whispered aloud, though no one was listening. But something deep beneath that sentence already knew this wasn't the first rewrite, and it wouldn't be the last. 3 days before I left, I stepped back into the house I used to call home. Vera had texted that morning asking for a USB drive with some files from an old project we worked on years ago, something I'd kept because she hadn't. The tone of her message was uncharacteristically polite. I took that as a sign of goodwill. I shouldn't have. The living room smelled like polish and lilacs. Someone had been through here recently, probably a cleaner. Everything looked curated, almost staged. I moved toward the fireplace, glancing at the mantel, and froze. The photo, that same family portrait we'd taken in Yellowstone. Dad had insisted we dress like we weren't miserable cookies, matching shirts, fake laughs. It was staged and awkward, but it was one of the last pictures of all 4 of us together. Except now it was 3. The print over the mantel was a larger version, but something was off. I took a step closer. Vera center, Clara next to her, Dad on the right, hand resting on Vera's shoulder. The far left, where I remembered standing with my arm looped awkwardly behind Vera's back, gone, cropped out. The background extended just enough to fill the space where I'd once been. My stomach dipped. I reached for my phone and opened the original in my gallery. I'd saved it years ago in a folder called Things Worth Keeping. I held it up to the framed version. Same date, same outfits, same trees in the background. Just one person missing. Me. I didn't say anything. I just stood there staring at that empty space like it might give me a reason. Upstairs, I heard movement. Laundry being folded, drawers opening and closing. I followed the sound, driven less by curiosity and more by the hollow feeling spreading in my chest. My old room wasn't mine anymore. The paint was the same, but the energy had shifted. Vera stood inside folding towels. On the back of my old desk chair hung a soft blue satin dress. I knew that fabric. I'd picked it out myself. Dad had it tailored for me for my 28th birthday. "Where'd you find that?" I asked, voice low but steady. She didn't look up. "It was in storage. I had it taken in." "You had it? What?" "You haven't worn it in years," she said. Like that explained everything. "That wasn't yours to alter," I said. The edges of my voice frayed. Vera shrugged. "It's not like he's here to care anymore." That line did more damage than she probably intended, or maybe exactly what she meant it to. Clara appeared in the doorway just then, drying her hands on a kitchen towel. She glanced between us and offered a strange smile. "Tea's on," she said. "Why don't you both come downstairs?" I waited for something else. An acknowledgement, even a look in my direction that hinted she'd noticed what just happened. Nothing came. Her face was as still as the photo downstairs, framed, unmoved, adjusted to fit the narrative. I left without a word. In the driveway, I sat in my car for a long time. The interior was warm from the afternoon sun, but I felt cold. My fingers trembled slightly on the steering wheel. I turned the engine over, then off. Just sat there. "They're not just taking space," I whispered to no one. "They're rewriting the story." I saw Dad's handwriting flash through my memory, his note in the back of my old poetry journal. Memories are how we protect what matters. What happens when the people around you start sanding the edges off your life until even you can't be sure what was ever real? I drove back to my apartment slowly, stopping once for gas I didn't really need. I needed the pause more than the fuel, the silence. That night, I pulled out the old hard drive I hadn't touched in over a year. It clicked to life with a slow hum. I created a new folder and labeled it proof. I copied photos with me in them. Emails, screenshots, text threads, a voice memo from Dad saved from my 25th birthday. I wasn't planning to use them. Not yet. But if they were going to erase me, I wanted to have something that said I'd existed. Even if the only person who ever looked at it again was me. 2 days before everything fell apart, I received an envelope in the mail. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, Clara's style, of course. Inside was an invitation to the Eugene Historical Society's 50th anniversary gala. The line at the bottom read, "Hosted by Ms. Vera Whitmore and guest." I read it twice. No mention of me. Not the Whitmore family. Not even Arlena Whitmore. Just guest. The implication landed with the same chill I felt opening that front door for a stranger. Still, Harper urged me to go. "Show up," she said. "Look good. Remind them you don't disappear just because they forget to say your name." So, I went. The event was held in the downtown Civic Hall. Rows of chairs lined the stage, glass pitchers sweating on long tables. I recognized most of the guests, donors, retired teachers, board members who used to call me the sweet one. I stepped in, heels clicking against polished wood, and smiled like I was happy to be there. But even before Vera took the podium, I felt it. She spoke effortlessly, her voice warm and composed, radiating poise the way she always did when there was something at stake. The speech started harmless, acknowledging past board members, community leaders, even Clara. Then came the part that stung. "I remember driving across counties with Mom," Vera said. delivering brochures by hand, going door to door back when we were just starting the foundation. She paused, smiling. Clara beamed in return. That had been my idea, my beat-up Honda. My summer spent mapping routes on sticky notes and running into grocery stores for cold coffee and hand sanitizer. Vera had tagged along on one trip, and now she'd lived it all. The audience clapped. I sat in the third row, nodding like I agreed with a version of the truth that didn't include me. My hands had started trembling by the time I stood up. I slipped out the side door, past the caterer prepping dessert trays, and into the quiet hallway. I pulled the invitation from my bag and looked at it again. This time, I noticed something I hadn't before. Veronica Clara Whitmore and guest. They'd even added her middle name. Full legacy. I folded the card in half and slid it into the trash near the restroom. No drama, just done. But that wasn't the first time something like this had happened. A memory surfaced, me at 11, nervously adjusting my shirt at a local library, holding my poem in sweaty fingers. I had won a regional writing contest. I remembered how Dad had grinned the whole way home, how Mom told the neighbors I really had a voice. Weeks later, I overheard Vera on the phone. Yeah, Arlena and I worked on that poem together. I mean, I helped her clean up the rhythm, obviously. Clara had been in the kitchen. She hadn't corrected her. She never did. That's when the doubts began. Not loud, not all at once, but slow, subtle, like wrought under paint. Backstage after the event, I found Vera by the refreshment table, sipping lemon water like she'd just accepted an award. No one else was around. I didn't plan what I said next. I didn't need to. Why do you keep erasing me? She blinked. Jesus, Arlena. Grow up. You took my story again. You stood up there and gave away a memory that wasn't yours. You were always the delicate one, she said, setting her glass down. We couldn't count on you to follow through. You cracked under pressure. I stared at her. That wasn't your call to make. Vera leaned in, voice low. You don't get to rewrite the past just because you want a bigger part in it. No, I said, steady now. You don't get to rewrite me just because you talked louder. She laughed, that sharp exhale she used when she wanted to dismiss me without getting her hands dirty. Then she walked away. Clara stepped in from the side hallway a moment later, holding a plate of untouched finger sandwiches. She must have heard at least the tail end. Did you hear what she said? I asked. Clara shifted the plate to her other hand. She didn't mean it like that. But you always mean it like that, I said. You mean it with silence. She didn't respond. That was the last time I waited for either of them to offer me a place at their table. I should have known it wasn't a real invitation. The second Clara called at a check-in. That's what she always did when she wanted to sound warm, but deliver something cold. Her voice was steady. Practice too careful to be casual. Just come by, she said. It's time we talked through everything. I went the next afternoon around 4. The sky was that typical midwinter gray, flat and unbothered, but there was a weight in the air that hadn't been there before. It followed me up the walkway and settled deep in my chest the moment I stepped onto Clara's porch. Vera's car was already in the driveway, angled in like it belonged more than I did. Of course, she was here. Of course, they were doing this together. Clara opened the door. All efficiency and coolness. No hug, no smile, just a tight nod and a wave inward like I was a courier dropping off forms. Vera was already seated at the dining table, a thick folder laid out in front of her. I didn't even need to see the embossed gold logo to know it was from the family attorney. I'd seen that same font on the documents when Dad died. Clara motioned toward the empty chair across from them. We've made a few updates to the estate plan. It's nothing urgent, just clarifications. I didn't move. I just stood there still in my coat, letting the silence stretch. Vera pushed the folder across the polished table. It's simpler this way. The properties will be transferred into my name. Fewer legal hurdles later. I looked at Clara, searching for some trace of discomfort, maybe even guilt. Is that what this is? A simplification? She avoided my eyes. You'll still receive a cash portion. It's not large, but meaningful. And what about the power of attorney? Clara paused, then gave a diplomatic half-smile. We thought it might be overwhelming. You've had a lot going on lately. There it was. The careful wording, the professional courtesy cloaking the personal decision. I let out a slow breath. Did either of you ask how that would feel? Vera crossed her arms and leaned back. You're too emotional for those decisions, Arlena. That sentence, that exact phrase, or some version of it had been thrown at me for years. It always landed the same, sharp, minimizing, permanent. But this time it came with paperwork. Clara stood and moved to the cabinet along the wall. She opened the top drawer and returned with a small time-worn envelope, its edges yellowed, the paper soft with age. She placed it on the table between us. I found this while cleaning out the upstairs closet, she said gently. It's the letter you wrote me when you were 19. You tucked in money from your first job. I stared at the handwriting on the front. My own. Clara gave a nostalgic smile as if this was some heartfelt moment. You don't need to hold on to things like this. It's not necessary. She hadn't even opened it. I reached out slowly, picked up the envelope, and slipped it into my purse. My hand lingered there for a moment, part grief, part resolve. Silence fell over the room, but it wasn't empty. It was dense, humming with things left unsaid. Then something in me shifted. My voice came out low, steady, cold. You've made your choices, I said. And I won't fight you for a seat at a table you already cleared of me. Clara blinked. Don't be dramatic. No one's pushing you out. I looked from one to the other. I'm not being dramatic. I'm just done underreacting. I picked up the folder Vera had slid across the table and handed it back to her untouched. I don't need this, I said. Vera let out a frustrated sigh. You always make things harder than they have to be. And yet, I said, slipping my arms into my coat. I'm still the quiet one between us. Neither of them moved. Neither of them said goodbye. I walked out with a steadiness I hadn't felt in years. A kind of deliberate calm, like every step was another nail in a coffin that should have been sealed a long time ago. And this time, I didn't glance back. Once inside my car, I sat with the engine off and my keys in hand. The hedge beside the driveway caught my eye, the same one I used to hide in as a child when I needed space to cry or to dream. I used to imagine it was a secret passage to a better life. Maybe in some way it still was. I pulled out my phone and dialed Harper. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, you okay? I stared at the unopened envelope on the seat beside me. My younger self, folded into paper. I need your help, I said. With what? I'm going to start collecting everything. Photos, emails, letters, screenshots, anything that shows I was here, that I counted, that I mattered. There was a pause. To what end? I looked at the steering wheel, then back at the envelope. I thought about everything swallowed for the sake of peace. Everything I let slide so I wouldn't seem difficult, emotional, too much. To remind them I existed, I said quietly, before I prove it. The morning I left, I wasn't supposed to be awake that early. Sleep had only half worked its magic after the conversation with Clara and Vera. My chest still felt tight, like my ribs had forgotten how to hold anything but hurt. I rolled over, planning to bury myself for another hour, but then came the ping. I wasn't expecting much, probably a newsletter or some spam, but my eyes caught the subject line. Final edits approved, tribute video. It was part of an email thread between Vera and a public relations contractor. I wasn't supposed to be copied. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The tone was professional, the exchange efficient, but halfway down the thread, it hit. Make sure our youngest part isn't included in the final cut, Vera had written. We've already aligned the messaging. A reply followed quickly. Understood. Replacing with extended Vera clip. I read it again, then a third time. I should have been furious. I should have thrown the laptop across the room, But I just sat there frozen like my body knew this wasn't news, just confirmation. A silent eraser handled in plain sight. The tribute video, Clara's milestone birthday, that ridiculous garden party full of lanterns and curated nostalgia. I'd spent hours filming my segment, pulling the curtains just right to catch golden light, repeating takes because my voice kept cracking. I'd even cried once talking about how she used to read to us under the jacaranda tree and it never aired. Not because it didn't land. Because Vera had deleted me. By noon, I was at Harper's place. I didn't say much, just showed up with my laptop and the kind of silence that makes good friends wordless. She opened the door, looked at me once, and cleared her dining table without a word. Check the shared drive, I managed to say, my voice flat. Vera sent it to me months ago. I never looked. We found it after some digging, buried under folders named Legacy Content and Final Assets. The wheel spun forever and then it loaded. Family timeline. Inside was a trash folder. And there it was. Arlena birthday clip final.mov. Still intact, still timestamped, still me. Harper backed it up like it was national treasure. 2 hard drives, 1 cloud, even a burner email address I'd forgotten ever creating. She turned to me. What do you want to do with it? I looked at the file, the name, the version of me they decided didn't fit. Keep it, I said, for now. Back home, I didn't unpack. I didn't eat. I didn't scroll away the feeling. Instead, I made space, cleared the clutter from my desk, wiped it down with an old dish towel, and opened a blank folder on my screen. The rewrite. Inside, I began to place the evidence, not to punish them, not even to demand anything, just so that finally someone, anyone, would see it wasn't all in my head. I added a cropped version of the Yellowstone photo where I'd been cut off at the shoulder. The birthday invitation, the one where my name was missing. The tribute video, my voice, my memories, my face. Screenshots of Vera's email thread with the PR vendor. A scanned PDF of the estate paperwork Clara quietly handed me last fall. The envelope I'd never sent, my 19-year-old self's letter to Clara, sealed but unread. I dragged each item into the folder like placing bones in a display case. They had their version. This was mine. I didn't feel angry anymore. Not in the fire-breathing way people expect. I was something else. Resolved, unhooked. Harper texted me around 8. You good? I stared at it for a while, then typed back. I'm about to be. I opened a new message window. No salutation, no sign-off, just 2 attachments, the tribute video, a screenshot of Vera's instruction to erase me. And then I addressed the email not to Vera, not even to Clara, but to the people who mattered most in their world. Clara's nonprofit board, her closest donors, the foundation's media consultant. Subject line, this was her daughter, too. I stared at the send button, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to remember the stillness right before. Then I clicked. No fire, no thunder, just truth quiet and final. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside the city pulse, tail lights, porch lights, apartments blinking on one by one. Life indifferent but alive. They could keep pretending I was never part of the story. But not this time. This time I wrote it down. The magazine was everywhere. I hadn't planned to see it. I'd only stopped at the coffee shop for a quick cup before heading home. But there it was, a fresh stack of glossy covers at the register, proudly displayed like some kind of local gospel. Clara and Vera stood side by side on the cover, both in crisp pastels, arms gently linked, smiles carefully measured. The women behind the legacy, the headline read. I didn't pick it up at first, just stared at the pile like it might catch fire if I looked long enough. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened it with the care you reserve for something that might break you. The feature was glowing paragraph after paragraph about their tireless work building the foundation, launching initiatives, nurturing a family legacy of female leadership. I scanned for my name. Nothing, not even a footnote. And then came the kicker, Vera, quoted as the sole visionary behind the scholarship fund I had drafted, named, and fought to establish when no one else thought it was worth the trouble. I sat down at the nearest table and stared at the page, the steam from my coffee curling upward like it couldn't stand the company either. Within the hour, my phone buzzed with messages. Just saw the article. So proud of your family. Didn't know you stepped back. Must have been hard. And the one that finally made me put the phone face down. Vera really carried things, huh? I texted Harper. I didn't step back. I got shoved. By late afternoon, I was parked outside Clara's place. The sky had shifted into a muted blue, clouds rolling over like they knew what was coming. I walked in without knocking. She was in the sunroom watering plants. Vera wasn't there. I didn't wait to exchange pleasantries. I made my way to the hallway that once displayed our childhood art back when Clara pretended to be proud of both of us. And then I saw it. The painting I made at 14. Deep navy swirls, flecks of gold, brush strokes I still remembered wrestling into place. Dad used to call it my voice without words. Now it hung in a polished wooden frame with Vera's name signed neatly in the bottom corner. I stood in front of it, the air gone thin. You knew that was mine, I said quietly. Clara appeared behind me. I thought you wouldn't care. It's been years. I turned to her. So, because I stopped asking for space, you assumed I didn't deserve any. She opened her mouth, but said nothing. I walked toward the bookshelf, letting my eyes scan for other ghosts. And there they were, 2 awards I'd received in college, now displayed as part of a timeline exhibit Vera had arranged in the hallway. Only her name was listed on the tags. This isn't about memory anymore, I said. It's about intent. Clara didn't look at me. You're not just letting her rewrite everything, I said. You're helping her do it. There was nothing left to salvage in that room. I didn't yell, didn't cry, just took out my phone and snapped a picture of the painting. Then another of the mislabeled awards. That night, I sat in my apartment, lights dimmed, silence thick. I opened a new email, addressed it to the editor of the magazine. No greeting, just attachments, side-by-side scans of my original scholarship proposal and the published version she'd submitted months later with subtle edits. But all my structure, the timestamps were clear, the signatures, not hers. I included the painting photo, attached a digital version of the same art from a decade-old hard drive, same name, same brush patterns, with my signature digitally embedded from back then. Subject: you might want to fact-check your front page. I didn't sign it. I didn't have to. By morning, the article was gone from the magazine's website. No correction, no apology, but I knew Clara's inbox was catching heat. Harper forwarded me a screenshot from a board member asking why wasn't Arlena listed. Another said, "Can we confirm authorship of the fund language?" I didn't need them to respond. I just needed the silence that followed to be theirs for once, not mine. I hadn't planned on checking my phone again that night. After the magazine pulled the article and silence filled the void Vera once used to control every conversation, I'd expected peace, or at least quiet. But peace is never what it seems when it comes from people who built their comfort on your exclusion. The screen lit up around 10:17 p.m. Vera's name flashed, followed by a single message. Shell spiral, let her. No one believes her anyway. No greeting, no punctuation, and more importantly, no name, just she. It wasn't for me. Clearly meant for Clara. But it landed in my inbox anyway. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure if I felt more insulted by the words or the fact that even in private, I was never granted the decency of a name. She like I was a storm they could watch from a window. Like I didn't live inside the house, too. I didn't respond. Instead, I stepped outside Harper's apartment. The porch light buzzed overhead, casting a faint halo across the sidewalk. I paced the driveway once, twice, trying to keep my breath steady. Harper came out a minute later, arms folded under her hoodie. She sent it to you, she asked, already knowing. Wrong thread, maybe? I muttered. Right target, she said. She waited, giving me space to sort the words I didn't know how to say. They never saw me as part of this family, I finally said. Just someone to contain, to quiet down. Harper didn't interrupt. I'm not going back, I added. Not even for closure, because there's nothing left to close. Later, we sat on her couch, half a mug of lukewarm tea between us. She went digging through an old drawer of tech junk, tossing out chargers and scratched up thumb drives. Then she found it, a portable hard drive I'd given her years ago when I was clearing out my childhood desk. I don't know if it still works, she said. It did. The files loaded slowly, but there it was. A folder labeled letters that didn't need stamps. Inside, a document titled For Arlena AF, I don't get to say it. My hands trembled. I double-clicked. It was a draft email from Dad. Never sent, never printed, just saved. It read, Sweetheart, I don't know when this will reach you, or if it ever should, but I see things. I see how Vera needs control more than closeness. I see how your mother fears friction more than injustice. And I see you. You were always the one who saw things clearly. That made you a threat. Even in this house, you are not too much. You are not dramatic. You are feeling what others refuse to. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Don't let them make you forget who you are. You see more because you feel more. I sat there with his words glowing on the screen, my heart stretching to hold the weight of both pain and relief. I printed it. I didn't send it to anyone. Not yet. Instead, I added it to a folder on my laptop titled Not Forgotten, the same place where I'd stored the cropped photos, the deleted video, and every other piece of evidence they'd tried to erase. That night, I emailed just one thing to the community center, the original birthday tribute video, the same one Vera deleted from Clara's event. I offered it without context for their upcoming Women's History Month montage. No message, no backstory, only the file, my voice, my story in full. The next afternoon, it aired quietly online. It didn't go viral. It didn't need to. Clara saw it. She texted Vera one word. Enough. I saw the read receipt. No reply came. I deleted Vera's accidental message. After that, didn't respond. Didn't screenshot it. Some things aren't meant to be held on to, even if they're handed to you directly. She expected me to burn down. I didn't. I lit the room instead. The next morning, the phone rang exactly 13 times. I let it ring. I didn't move from the bed at first, just watched the screen light up again and again until it finally went dark. Then I got up, brewed coffee strong enough to burn the fog from my head, opened my laptop, and started a new document. Blank. White. Waiting. Not a blog post, not an email, not a letter I would ever send. A manuscript. On the first page I typed 4 words, the disappearing daughter. The calls had started just after sunrise, when the sky outside my window was still the color of weak tea. The phone glowed on the nightstand like it already understood that the day had tilted on its axis before I did. First Clara, then Vera, then an unknown number that felt like a trap. I stayed under the covers, knees drawn to my chest, and listened to the voicemails one after another, thumb hovering over delete. Vera's voice was raw, almost shredded. Arlena, I don't know what you think you're doing. You have to stop. You're going to destroy everything we've built. Clara's was slower, careful, the tone she used when she was trying to sound reasonable. We'd like to talk, darling. If you're willing. We didn't realize how far this had gone. But the last one, the one that lodged under my ribs, was barely sound at all. Just a long exhale, the kind that comes after holding your breath for years, and then Clara, so quietly I had to turn the volume all the way up, I don't know where we lost you. I deleted them all. No hesitation. Later, when the coffee had settled the tremor in my hands, I pulled on my father's old navy coat, the one that still smelled faintly of cedar and the river trail he loved, and walked the few blocks to the water. It was the same path he and I used to take on Saturdays when the house grew too loud, too crowded with other people's versions of us. I had printed his unsent email the night before and folded it once, sliding it into the inside pocket so that it pressed against my heart like a second pulse. Every few steps I touched the pocket, just to make sure it was still there. I didn't cry. The air was sharp enough to cut, and I let it. I walked until my legs remembered their own rhythm, until the river's low murmur became the only voice I needed to hear. Over and over I whispered to myself, so softly that even the wind couldn't steal it, I am still here. I did not disappear. Each repetition felt like laying another brick in a wall I should have built years ago. When I got back to the building, a plain brown package leaned against my door. No return address, no note, nothing. I carried it inside, set it on the kitchen counter, and opened it with the same scissors I'd used to cut myself out of photographs once upon a time. Inside was the original print of the Yellowstone picture, the one before anyone decided my elbow ruined the composition. All four of us, stiff and sunburned, standing in front of a sky sharp enough to draw blood. My arm was still there, draped awkwardly behind Vera's back like I was trying to hold on and push away at the same time. Dad's hand rested on my shoulder, thumb just brushing the collar of my t-shirt. I could almost feel it again. Taped to the back of the frame was a piece of paper gone soft at the edges. I knew it before I unfolded it, the poem I wrote when I was 11, the one Vera later claimed we'd written together during a sleepover. The one Clara had looked at blankly when I asked if she remembered, as if childhood itself were a foreign language she'd forgotten how to speak. My handwriting, purple ink, little hearts over the eyes. She had kept it all these years, hidden somewhere safe. I set the frame on the windowsill where the afternoon light could find it. I didn't call. I didn't text. Some thank yous are too heavy for words. Vera never called again. Not once. No apology, no explanation, no furious demand that I take everything back. Instead, over the next few days, I watched her name evaporate from the world she'd spent a lifetime polishing. Press releases rewrote themselves overnight. Foundation websites refreshed and suddenly her title belonged to the team. Event programs that once listed her as keynote now thanked our dedicated committee. It happened quietly, surgically, the way glaciers move, slow enough that you only notice the absence after the landscape has already changed. I didn't feel victorious. I felt the way you feel when a tooth finally stops aching, startled by how long you'd grown used to the pain. A week later a friend asked if I would speak to a small community group downtown, 20 people at most, about the role stories play in shaping who we believe we are. I almost said no. My voice still felt too new, like skin after a burn. But I went. I stood beneath a single hanging bulb in a room that smelled of old books and instant coffee and told them the simplest version I could manage. I talked about being edited out of my own life. About learning that silence can be a form of erasure. About choosing, finally, to write myself back in. I never said my mother's name. I never said my sister's. I didn't need to. When I finished, the room stayed quiet so long I thought I'd failed. Then a woman in the back row stood up. She was maybe 60, wearing a hand-knitted cardigan the color of storm clouds. Her voice shook, but she didn't look away. I've been waiting my whole life, she said, for someone to say out loud that it happened to them too. The following Monday I signed a contract with an independent press in Seattle. The advance wouldn't even cover a month's rent, but the editor cried on the phone when she finished the proposal, and that felt like money enough. The title we settled on was Disappeared, A Daughter's Undoing. On the dedication page I wrote only one line, for anyone who ever needed proof they were real. After the last signature, I closed the laptop and walked barefoot to the kitchen. The floor was cold and honest under my feet. I boiled water, dropped a bag of chamomile into a mug that had survived 3 moves and 1 divorce, and stood there watching the leaves uncurl like tiny green fists opening. The apartment was silent, but it was my silence, earned, chosen, kept. Sunlight slid across the counter and climbed the wall until it reached the windowsill. It touched the uncropped photograph first, warming the glass, then moved to the printed email beside it, Dad's last words to me, finally given shape on real paper. I had framed them both in plain wood, nothing ornate, nothing that begged for attention. I didn't put them there to win an argument that was already over. I put them there because some mornings I still need to see the evidence with my own eyes, that I was loved once, fiercely and imperfectly, and that love doesn't vanish just because the people who gave it learn how to look away. The light lingered on my cheek for a moment, gentle as breath. I smiled, small, steady, mine. Sometimes the ones who try hardest to mute you are the same ones who taught you how to speak. I spent years shrinking myself to fit the space they kept clearing for someone else. But here's what I know now: your place in the story isn't decided by committee. Your memories are not multiple choice. And no one gets the final edit on your existence but you.